In a world full of email, instant messaging, and other forms of digital communication, it seems like the art of storytelling has been lost. But in Nana's Bible Stories, author Lady Roberta Simpson, also known as the Mother Goose of Bible Stories, shares beloved Bible stories from a unique and colorful perspective. And we are so glad to have you with us today. Thank you so much for being with us. But tomorrow you're actually going to be in Dallas, Texas, and you're going to be receiving the President's Volunteer Service Award from Grammy Award-winning singer Michael W. Smith. Can you tell us a little bit about that award?
Well, Michael W. is the chairman of it, and it's for volunteer work. And my husband and I have been involved in many things over the years, different organizations in the U.S., but at home too. And, you know, when you get an award like this, it's kind of humbling because you always think of hundreds of other people that deserve it more than you do, but I'm very grateful and very honored, and I just love Michael W., so I'm going to enjoy being at that concert tomorrow.
Well, I hear that while you're there, you're going to be issuing a challenge to nanas, to grandmothers all over the nation. So what is the challenge?
Well, the challenge is for nanas to be involved. You know, so often women my age think, oh, well, you know, you're older now and you can just sit down and relax. And I mean, reading to children is one of the most wonderful things you can ever do because you have a contact with them. And I want to encourage nanas, whether they have children, you know, I mean, Nana is a grandmother, but there's some women my age who don't maybe have children. Well, they can go to the hospitals, they can adopt other children and read them.
Or library reading rooms. Right?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's an opportunity to snuggle up with a child, put your arm around that child. And there's a lot of children that are hurting and don't have too much hope. And we can do so much for children to encourage them to read. And reading is an adventure. You know, you can. I used to love to read. If my grandfather always used to give me money, 50 pence in those days, whatever that is now. And I wouldn't buy a toy, I'd buy a book.
Wow.
So I've grown up on books, and I've read to my children and told them stories and other kids. And there are times when I was with children the other day in a school, and I had an opportunity to hug some of them and encourage them in reading and encourage them in writing stories themselves.
What role did your Nana play? She's quite a fascinating woman in her own right.
Yes, she was very different, my grandmother. But I loved being with her. She was a very exciting grandmother. And even when she was in her 80s, you know, she was just an amazing lady. She went everywhere, did everything. And she was a storyteller, she was a writer, she was a painter. And sometimes I would look at her life and think, I don't have any talent. You know, when I look at my grandmother, and I thought she was given all the talent, and now I'm finding myself writing it.
Following in those footsteps.
Now, I read that, was she kind of the inspiration for Wendy?
Yes, in Peter Pan. J.M. Barrie was her mentor.
Wow.
And he took such an interest in, and that's another example of somebody older encouraging a young lady, who she was at the time, to write, and he would help her and teach her. And
that's great.
Then she became his inspiration for Wendy and Peter Pan. I mean, wow.
I know. Well, now the torch has been passed to you. And so now you find yourself writing, and you, like you said, you're really a storyteller. You didn't even really think that you kind of would find yourself writing books.
I was told I couldn't write.
No way. They told you that?
I did a writing seminar in Barbados, and we had to submit different things we'd written, and then they gave us something that we had to write about. I don't remember what it was. And this gentleman, who I know very well, he, you know, he was in charge of correcting my paper, and he scribbled it all up. And at the bottom, you can't write, you know, find something else to do. And then he says, I hope I didn't discourage you. And I said, well, yes, you did. But I had 5 kids, and they were all young at the time, and I just put it aside. And I didn't really have a desire to do much then. So, you know.
And looking at Nana's Bible Stories, which has a bonus CD in there as well, how did you kind of wind up putting this project together?
Well, I was, as I said before, I love telling stories. I would always tell my children and my grandchildren made-up stories, and they loved that. And one day, one of my husband's secretaries knew that I'd been babysitting the night before with 2 of my grandchildren. And she said, "What crazy story did you make up and tell your grandchildren last night?" And I said, "Well, actually, I told them a Bible story, and it was the little lost lamb. But I had bears and wolves and, you know, lions in it." And she said, "Well, why don't you write them down and get them published?" I said, "Been there, done that, never doing it again, because I remembered that you can't write." And this is good for other people to hear, because often people put us down, and then we listen to them instead of saying, "No, I can do this if God wants it." But anyway, I was kind of snooty to her, and I walked out, got in my car, and if ever God spoke to me, it was then. And when I got in my car, he said, "You can now write." And an excitement and a joy came up in my spirit. I couldn't wait to get home, went straight to my computer, and wrote the first story, which is The Little Lost Lamb.
Wow. Now, one of the lovely things about the stories is you kind of take a very unique perspective, and you write them from the eyes of a child and animals.
Yes.
Now, what made you decide to go that route?
Well, often when I read a story, like the one about the leper, I always imagine the background, and I've been to Israel many times. I've seen the scenery. I know where things happen, which really helps in writing. And that story, for instance, of the leper, I remember reading something on him once, and I thought, well, that man could have had a family. And what better way for a child to understand and can put himself in that position than sort of invent something around the story. And I'm very careful to stick exactly with the Bible story. That's not changed. But some Bible stories are only 3 lines. So I've invented a story around the story.
What would have been like to have been there?
And been the little boy that gave Jesus the loaves, or been there when Jesus blessed the children and healed a child, and you can be that. That child can be that, you know, a follower, and put himself in that situation.
For parents that are watching today, and maybe their kids are not involved so much in reading, like Chuck said, his children read all the time. My kids love to read as well. But, you know, with video games and with television and with the computer, you know, we do a lot of reading on a digital screen. What can parents do to maybe encourage or to kind of get their kids involved and get involved with them in reading?
Well, of course, it depends on the age group, because some kids want to read on their own. But for children that are not really reading on their own, get a good book. Get Nana's Bible stories. and read to them and encourage them and say, you know, it's an adventure to read. You're reading about, say, another country, another situation, and just encourage them that this is something good to do. And I just find that if you don't read as a child, then, and I find that in my own family, I have 5 kids. Some are good, some have been reading for years, and others that they haven't caught on to the vision of reading. And for older children, there's some good books out there, really good books, and encourage them. Or, you know, my kid, 2 of my grandchildren are going to school now, that they have to read a book every week.
Wow.
Maybe it will take them a week or week and a half to read, but they read it, they give a little report on it, they have to do it, and they're enjoying it.
And 50 pence, does that still work today, or?
I don't know what, 50 pence is probably 1 cent or something.
I don't think that would work. You gotta up it.
No, that wouldn't work.
But that's, what are your thoughts on that? Maybe a little bit of a special reward for completing a book or giving a little report on a book.
Yes, I don't see anything wrong with that. But I think the parents should be involved in it. I don't believe in just throwing a book at a child and said, read this book. I think the parent needs to read it or read part of it, get to know what's in it, what's interesting, what's exciting. You know, kids want excitement and they want adventure, and that's why I have, you know, lions and wolves in the story.
And tigers.
Because they were there in Israel in those days. They did have bears. So I'm not writing something that's someone saying, but there's no bears in Israel, there's no wolves, but there were.
Now, as you issue this challenge tomorrow when you're going to be in Dallas, Texas, what do you see? Is it really a national concern with this lack of reading with our children?
Well, it seems to be, and I think the statistics are a bit shocking. You know, and I read some something where it said that some kids, they like a certain author or a certain book, and they'll read a book, and people, oh, great, you know, kids are reading these books. But then it's one book a year, one book
right.
Every 2 years. That is not enough. I mean, it's great to read a book, but read more. They just need to read more. It's really shocking, and I think if we're raising kids like that, then when they get to be adults, it's going to affect their lives in every possible way.
Absolutely. Well, Nana's Bible Stories is a great way to begin. Do you have plans for others in the future?
I have so many books in my head. I just pray the Lord will give me, if He's giving me ideas, then He'll give me the years to write them.
That's
Amen.
right. And He will. He
Yeah.
will. Well, thank you so much for coming and being with us today, and congratulations on your award tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Well, if you'd like to connect with Roberta, you can visit us at www.harvest-tv.com to find an easy way to link to her website. Well, coming up later on Harvest, Bible Quest representative Justin Durst is here to introduce products for kids that maintain biblical authenticity combined with science-based learning.